Welcome to the misread Torah podcast for Parshas Shelach. Join us as we explore the weekly Parsha, uncovering valuable insights and striving to become the best versions of ourselves through Musar teachings. In this week's Parsha, we encounter one of the most tragic episodes in our nation's journey, the story of the Meraglim, the spies sent to scout out the land of Israel. On its surface, it's a straightforward narrative. 12 distinguished leaders are sent to explore the Promised Land, but 10 return with a frightening report, causing the people to lose faith in Hashem's promise. As a consequence, an entire generation is condemned to wander in the desert for 40 years. However, there is a deeper question that has puzzled commentators for generations. How could these great men, princes of their tribes, distinguished leaders, make such a catastrophic error? These weren't ordinary individuals. They were the cream of the crop, chosen specifically for this critical mission. Yet, they failed dramatically, bringing disaster upon themselves and the entire nation. To understand this better, let's contrast their mission with another spying expedition. When Yehoshua sent Kalev and Pinchas to scout out Yericho, the Medrash draws a fascinating comparison between these two missions that reveals something profound about human nature. When Kalev and Pinchas entered Yericho, they disguised themselves as merchants selling their wares. This simple act of going undercover demonstrated a critical quality, mesiras nefesh, self-sacrifice, and dedication to their mission. They were willing to put themselves at risk, to step outside their comfort zones, to ensure success. In contrast, the Medrash suggests that the Meraglim Moshe sent lacked this quality. They did not exert that extra effort, that additional level of dedication. This seemingly minor deficiency, this tiny measure of atzlus, laziness, distorted their entire perception of the land and its challenges. Rav Henoch Libu Etzeichel Levracha points out that this teaches us something profound about human nature. When we lack zeal and enthusiasm for a task, when we approach it with even a slight measure of laziness, it warps our entire perception of reality. Challenges appear larger than they actually are. Obstacles seem insurmountable. The good becomes invisible, while difficulties are magnified. This insight is further illustrated by another beautiful teaching from the Medrash in Devarim Rabbah. It describes a conversation someone had with a lazy person and was told that there is a rabbi in town teaching Torah. "You should go learn from him," someone suggests. "Oh, I would," replied the lazy person, "but I'm afraid there might be lions in the streets." "Don't worry," comes the response. "The rabbi is actually teaching in his house right here in town." "Ah, but what if I get there and find the door locked?" counters the lazy person. At first glance, this dialogue seems absurd. The chance of encountering a lion in a Jewish town is practically non-existent, and a locked door is hardly an insurmountable obstacle. That's precisely the point the Medrash is making. When atzlus takes hold, our mind creates fantastic obstacles to justify our inaction. Our perception becomes distorted, and we genuinely believe these exaggerated dangers are real. This is what happened with the Meraglim. Their slight lack of enthusiasm, their tiny measure of laziness, caused them to perceive giants where there were just tall people, insurmountable fortifications where there were just normal city walls, and certain death where there was actually promised victory. The Mesilas Yesharim, that masterpiece of ethical guidance by Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, Zeichel Levracha, offers us practical advice for overcoming this natural tendency toward laziness. He advises us that we cultivate zrizus, zeal and enthusiasm, by consistently reflecting on the importance of mitzvos and our obligation to fulfill them. How do we develop this zeal? The Mesilas Yesharim suggests a powerful practice. Regularly contemplate all the goodness Hashem has bestowed upon us, our health, our financial stability, our families, the very air we breathe. When we truly recognize how much we've been given, we naturally feel an overwhelming obligation to serve Hashem with enthusiasm and dedication. Think about it. We don't even need to consciously decide to breathe. Our hearts beat without our instruction. Our immune system fights off countless threats each day without our awareness. When we truly consider these constant gifts, how can we not feel motivated to serve our Creator with enthusiasm? The lesson from the Meraglim is particularly relevant in our daily lives. How often do we approach mitzvos, tefillah, or Torah study with a subtle lack of enthusiasm? How frequently do we phone in our religious obligations, doing just enough to check the box, but not exerting that extra effort? How dramatically does this affect our experience of those very activities? When we daven without concentration, naturally it feels boring and burdensome. When we learn Torah without enthusiasm, of course, it seems dry and difficult. When we perform mitzvos mechanically, certainly they feel like a chore rather than a privilege. Our laziness doesn't just affect our actions, it transforms our entire perception of those actions. If even the great Meraglim weren't immune to the subtle influences of atzlus, how much more so must we guard against it in our own lives? This awareness isn't meant to discourage us, but to empower us. By recognizing this tendency, we can consciously work to overcome it. The next time you find yourself dreading a mitzvah or approaching your davening with reluctance, pause and remember the lesson of the Meraglim. Recognize that your perception is likely being distorted by that subtle atzlus. Then, take a moment to reflect on Hashem's goodness in your life and approach the task with renewed enthusiasm. As we conclude this week's episode, let's challenge ourselves to identify one area in our avodas Hashem where we might be affected by this subtle laziness. Perhaps it's our concentration during tefillah, our diligence during learning, or our enthusiasm for chesed. Whatever it may be, let us commit to infusing it with a new energy and zeal in the coming week. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Masorah Torah. Until next time, may we all merit to serve Hashem with enthusiasm and joy, seeing the world through the clear lens of zrizus rather than the distorted glass of atzlus. Have a good Shabbos.